Digicams have been very popular lately. But what if I told you there is a unique Digicam that possibly trumps all the rest? If that piques your interest, then stick around because we're going to be taking a look at the Olympus Cammedia C-7070 wide zoom. Now, this is a unique bridge camera from the year 2005 that honestly offers quite a lot, but it isn't without a few downsides. Now, I'm going to start out with the physical body of the camera, and then I'll talk about image quality for photography, followed by a super brief look at what this camera offers on the video side of things. And finally, I'll conclude with my overall thoughts on the strengths and limitations of this camera. So let's begin with the camera body itself. This is what we'd call a bridge camera, because it's bridging the gap between point and shoot and full DSLR. It offers a DSLR-like experience in terms of features and image quality, but it has a non-removable lens, so it remains cheaper, smaller, and lighter at the cost of not having a lens to swap out for. Now, some of the spec highlights include a 7.1 megapixel CCD sensor, ability to shoot photos in RAW, an integrated zoom lens with a 35mm equivalent range of 27 to 110 millimeters, fairly useful, and, drumroll please, a flip-up screen, which is useful in taking selfies. Which is really interesting that they thought of that considering this camera came out in 2005. But with that out of the way, let's do a little overview of the physical camera. So on the front side, we have the Olympus badging as well as the Cammedia badging. That's kind of a series of cameras that they did. And this is the C-7070 wide zoom. Of course, we have the beautiful lens on the front, and then you're also going to have the viewfinder. So this is the other side of the viewfinder where you're actually looking out. So worth noting, you're not looking through the lens, but you're looking through this viewfinder here. Of course, we also have the flash module up in the top. We have our AV out, USB, and then also our DC adapter. Jumping around to the back side, we have our viewfinder here, and then we also have our LCD panel. It's really small. It's not going to be able to tell you quite whether you got something in focus, but it can be used for composing the shot, seeing if you generally got it. And this is actually going to be digital, so you are looking through the lens when you look at the digital screen here on the back. We also have some buttons here, a few that are worth noting. Menu button, OK button, that's going to bring up the menu, which we'll show here in a little bit. And then you have your navigation for navigating the menu, but also for navigating through pictures that you've taken when you're reviewing them. You will also have an info button. This will turn on and off this LCD screen as well. And then a quick view button will allow you to quickly jump into seeing the last image that you took without having to actually switch the mode dial over to reviewing photos. So there's not necessarily a view button like there is on more modern cameras. They just have this quick view. We also have the ability to change what part of the exposure triangle we're adjusting. I'll show you that here in a moment. And then also we can enable or really just adjust our flash settings with this button here on the side. And then also on the back we have our switch or our dial. So this will allow us to adjust aperture, shutter speed, things like that. And then also our power switch. So this is what's going to flip the camera on and then allow us to be able to utilize it. So again, if we want to change whether the screen is on or off, as well as the info that it displays, we can use that button. And then again, right now we are in program mode. If we switch over to manual, we can then manually adjust our settings here. And if I want to switch from shutter speed over to aperture, I just click that exposure button, and that will let me switch to aperture. We also have our hot shoe. So if we want to fire off-camera flash, we could utilize this with a wireless or wired transmitter, or even just put a flash external directly on here and just get a better quality flash than we do with the front unit. And then we also have a ability to zoom in and out. So we have our zoom button, as well as a shutter release button here to actually take the photo. And then our mode dial is the other really big one here. So this will allow you to switch between manual to maybe something like program. Maybe you jump back to the review. So this is actually how you go and look through and see the different photos that you've taken. And then again, there is also a video feature as well. So if you want to shoot video with this camera, you can do so. We also have our door that opens up to the card slot, and there are actually 2 card slots in this camera. So one is going to be your CF Express, or I don't know if this is CF Express, but compact flash in general. These are pretty common for this time period. But there is also an XD picture card slot here, and that is where this button on the bottom comes into play. If you have both cards in this camera, you can switch between the two. So you can shoot CF card, click this button, it'll jump over to the XD picture card, and then you're storing pictures that way. So that's what that button's for. This just uses a pretty standard Olympus DSLR battery. So if you have a Olympus E500 or E300 or anything like that, it's going to actually use the same battery, which is pretty cool. Turning now to image quality, I was very curious if this camera could produce images that were better than my other point and shoot cameras. Ultimately, that would be a big part of why you would pick a camera like this over something that's smaller like a point and shoot camera. Now, I photographed with this camera for almost 2 years. I want to say in preparation for this video, but realistically, I was just delaying in creating this. But that said, I had a lot of images to review, and I have to say I've been really impressed with the quality of the photography out of this little camera. It certainly beats, in most cases, the other point and shoot cameras I've tested over the years, including my beloved Fujifilm FinePix J40. Now, that's not to say it produces a better image every single time, but rather that it's fairly consistently the better image maker. Now I have to admit, a big part of that is the fact that the C-7070 can shoot in RAW, whereas my point and shoot cameras are limited to JPEG. And obviously, RAW files give you so much more information and flexibility to edit the image that you just don't get with a normal JPEG. No JPEG hate here. But this is the point where another huge question popped into my mind. Could the C-7070 produce images that meet or beat a similar amount of megapixels in a sensor like the one you find in the Olympus E500? The E500 has about the same amount of megapixels and came out a year apart from the C-7070, so it kind of felt like a fair test, or at least fair-ish. And I say that because it might be no surprise that the E500 totally defeats the C-7070 on just about every level. It's got a larger sensor, significantly higher quality glass in front of that sensor, and honestly just better color science and processing behind the sensor. So when looking at images side by side, it's really no contest. But the fact that this camera is better than a point and shoot, but not as good as a DSLR, is exactly what it's supposed to be. It is, after all, a bridge camera. Okay, So image quality, check. But I know a few people will want to know about the video quality. Does this camera even shoot video? If it does, is it any good? Well, this camera does shoot video, but it is limited to short 30-second or less clips at the full resolution of 480p with 30 FPS. Now, longer clips can be created, seemingly up to about 50 minutes, if you shoot in 240p with 30 FPS. That isn't great from a spec standpoint, and the video I shot was not impressive to me. But this is one of those things where it is opinion-based. You might love the video look, so I figured I'd at least include some of the footage straight from the camera. Now, I didn't take much video, and I think it speaks for itself, but if you're wanting that early digital 2000s look, this might honestly be it. Although, I am going to argue that there probably are better cameras out there for that look. Okay, but what did I love and what did I hate about this camera? AKA the strengths and the limitations. You know, I think this camera has a lot of strengths. Image quality is super strong. And it also has both an optical viewfinder and a live view in an LCD. It's small, but at the same time uses the same batteries as Olympus DSLR cameras. Functionally, it's a bit slower than other cameras, but that comes with the ability to have a lot of creative control that other cameras just don't offer. Now, I can speak positively about this camera all day, but that said, the main limitation this camera does have is unfortunately pretty pronounced. The biggest limitation you'll notice is the processing time for RAW files. When you take a picture in RAW, you'll be looking at a few seconds for the camera to save that image. It's not terribly long, but when you're out snapping photos, it can kind of get old quick. And unfortunately, it's not just when you're saving a photo that you've just taken, but also when reviewing photos, you can expect to look at a black screen for several seconds each time you scroll to the next photo. If you can live with that processing time, or if you plan to shoot in JPEG only, then I think this is an exceptional camera. I hope you found this helpful, and I'm curious if people find this type of camera desirable compared to a more traditional point and shoot. Sound off in the comments below with your thoughts and any questions you have, and I will do my best to answer all of those. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and that'll keep you in the know for when the next video drops. But speaking of other videos, you can find out more about the Olympus E500 I mentioned earlier by watching this next one.